I think that's a good transition into this, which is my favorite thing going on in American politics personally. You might agree, you've made several videos on it, but we got to talk about it. We're seeing Greater Idaho sweep
Oh yeah,
across
yeah,
eastern
yeah, yeah.
Oregon. And the movement, if anyone doesn't know, it's a movement to move Oregon and Idaho's border to where, Idaho basically takes over 62% of the land of Oregon, but it's only 380,000 people in there. So it's not even half of a congressional district these days. But 12 out of the 12 counties that have voted for it have voted in support, and only 3 more counties need to
Yeah.
vote. So it's gaining a lot of support. I'm wondering, do you think that what are your thoughts on this and the broader
Mhm.
trends? And do you think, my biggest thing is, if we don't start doing innovative kind of
Yeah.
interstate things like this, people are going to start getting very frustrated with the political process very fast. I think if both parties were smart, they would use this as a pressure release valve, personally.
Yeah, again, I think you're absolutely right on that, Conrad, and I agree with you. I'm fascinated, particularly about I guess some scholars would call it internal versus external secession. So staying within the country, but trying to recalibrate your municipal borders so that your voice can actually be heard politically, because 51% democracy can easily turn into 49% tyranny. I mean, 49% of those people have to live under a regime they didn't vote for and they don't want. So I think in many respects, something like a Greater Idaho movement is precisely the kind of positive enactment of democratic values that can be employed so as to provide some kind of guidance and some kind of voice for the people. We have to understand just how disenfranchising our current political map really is, the way it's structured. And again, this is because the 19th century saw one of the biggest demographic shifts we've ever witnessed, one of the more dramatic demographic shifts. At the beginning of the 19th century, 90% of the population was rural, only 10% was urban. At the end of the 19th century, in the Industrial Revolution, 90% was urban and 10% was rural. And that has, now we're moving out of that. We're going through a deurbanization that's happening right now. But that has had an extraordinary capacity or consequence to disenfranchise more and more counties in our nation. And for a legacy media that's so hypersensitive about voters being disenfranchised, isn't it so interesting that they completely ignore something like what's happening in the state of Oregon? So you got, which is comprised of, Oregon's comprised of 36 counties. It's one of the bluest states in the country in terms of statewide elections, of who they send federal, who becomes governor, all that good stuff. And that said, if just one of those 36 counties disappeared, Multnomah County, where Portland is, just one of those counties disappeared. I read a study that concluded that if you just had those 35 of the 36 counties, one disappeared, they determined that the Republican statewide candidate would win by an average of 10 points in virtually every single election. That's the kind of disenfranchisement rural Oregon voters feel. Republicans consistently win 29 or 30 of Oregon's 36 counties. But because of this one county, all 29 or 30 of those counties are totally negated. And so it's inevitable. That kind of disenfranchisement cannot last forever. And so they are actively seeking some kind of permanent resolution, and that is secession. They want to join up with Idaho. And in fairness, this is not just theoretical, and it's not just limited to the referendum, and it's not just symbolic. I mean, the Idaho State Legislature actually has a study that they are putting forward to looking at what is involved in moving the border westward. There's a bill in the Oregon Senate that wants to take seriously the issue of rural disenfranchisement, and part of that is considering moving the border since you have so many disaffected citizens in your state. So we'll see. But this is precisely the kind of citizen activism that not only you need, but you can expect to see when so many have basically been effectively shut out of the democratic process when it comes to statewide elections. If you suffer from daily pain, I need you to listen to this message very carefully. As we age, aches and pains are normal. We're all searching for effective ways to relieve pain. And in light of this opioid crisis, safety is more important than ever. And that's where a groundbreaking medical scientist comes in, Clint Winters. You've seen Clint on Fox. You've read about him in Forbes. He's a world-renowned health expert who's unveiled a natural pain reliever that's taking the world by storm. It's called CB2, the 100% drug-free way to get full-body pain relief without dangerous meds. It's the go-to pain reliever for hundreds of professional athletes, tens of thousands of seniors, and the pain reliever of choice for the UFC. And the best news is CB2 has no documented side effects after years of private testing. It's absolutely the future of pain relief. Just ask the athletes in the UFC. It's their official pain reliever. So whatever you do, make sure to click on that link below and check out Clint's amazingly informative report on how CB2 is changing lives by providing safe and powerful relief at a fraction of the cost of pain pills. Click on that link below right now.
And this is going to be one of those ways where, like, sure, the left might be against it because it does shore up Idaho as this kind of fortress. But look, it will free up Oregon to be the progressive, bastion it always wanted to be. The Republicans won't have any numbers to do anything in the state legislature and block stuff. So there's no reason. The problem is, unfortunately, people in Portland, specifically like the really far left people in academia, they've made it clear their goal. Their goal is, as they call it, like the deconstruction of the white supremacist system, as they call it, which if you translate that, it basically just means disenfranchising white people. Like, that's really just all it means. And that's why if I could maybe convince them that the 380,000 people in Eastern Oregon were Somalian refugees and that was their decision, maybe
that is the cultural Marxism of repressive tolerance that Herbert Marcuse and others were advocating. Is the only way you're going to get cultural control is if you overthrow the dominant ethnic majority. And this is why you have Patriarch Kirill and a number of, Orban in Hungary, the Law and Justice Party, Mateusz Morawiecki, and so forth, and Poland. So why they said this multicultural stuff is wicked stuff. Yeah, I mean, heck, you even had someone, like Emmanuel Macron talking that way in France. You got to keep this notion that we have to somehow derogate and destroy the dominant ethnicity so as to be able to create a majority of the aggrieved, a majority of minorities, as it were. And the only way you could do that is by destroying, in effect, the dominant ethnic and cultural majority. It becomes, you've just unleashed a radical cultural civil war. That's why, Carol Swain talked about how back in 2000, how the new white nationalists were not KKK members. They weren't social Darwinists. They didn't believe in biological superiority or anything. When all is said and done, they were civil rightists. They were sick and tired of being told that, hey, if you're black, you can vote your political interests. If you're Latino, you can vote your political interests. If you're Asian, you can vote your political interests. But if you're white, sit down and shut up. You got to be a radical individualist. You're not allowed to be ethnocentric in your cultural political concerns. And Carol Swain, who is herself black, said that's just simply not a sustainable model.
I mean, so many people forget that, look, we're not here to relitigate the 20th century civil rights movement, but that was the army had to be deployed on the people of the South for all of that to go through, for that legislation. Like, that was, like, there's still people alive today that do feel that, like, they are, like, that the forces that are now manifested in, like, DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, that from the 1960s they've been under, like, occupied territory by the results that led to that regime. And I think like you said, like there's nobody here advocating some kind of resurgence of a caste system. Frankly, some people just want to be left alone,
Right,
and
right,
it's
right,
and
right.
I think
And they want to enjoy the historic customs and traditions and cultures of our nation
And
and
I think
stop.
what frustrates people
Yeah,
even more from the Republicans, so look, we know where the Democrats and the Marxists stand, okay, and we're
right,
not surprised by that, but it's the Republicans who cite our constitutional republic history as a reason for us to accept multiculturalism. I would just encourage anybody to read John Jay or the Federalist Papers and what they say about what this country, who this country needs to be made up of for the system to work. I would encourage people to read that before they tell me that I'm betraying the Constitution by perhaps being an immigration restrictionist or something like that.
right,
I
right,
think that's
right,
an
right.
interesting. I think a
Oh,
lot
an
of people.
interesting Yoram Hazony. I mean, again, very interesting scholar, Israeli American scholar, who's kind of behind the resurgence of nationalist conservatism. But he would argue the same thing. He said, "Yeah, I mean, you've got to have a culture that is protected, that is loved and revered, if you're going to have a flourishing nation." And this is one of the reasons why it seems Israel is bucking the trend right now and is actually demographically exploding. And it's not just the Orthodox that are having lots and lots of kids. Even secular Jews are above the 2.1 replacement level. And when pushed to figure out what on earth is going on there, the most common thing they hear among their citizenry is, well, unlike the secular West, we feel like we have a mission. We feel like we have a purpose here. And that comes from their culture. You've got to have that. So there's a reason why cultural Marxists attack culture. It's because if you attack culture, you destroy the immune system that is able to um, to uh, to thwart what are technically called perturbations. You're able to get rid of anything that would end up getting in the way of social flourishing. And if if cultural Marxism is responsible for anything, it is for the total destruction of social flourishing of American culture.
Well, I think we're both in agreement that if Greater Idaho happens, we'll be moving to the Willamette Valley of Oregon to enjoy the beauty of the Pacific Northwest without the nonsense of Oregon politics. That's my pledge to the audience. So
There
if
you go. There you
you want
go.
to see me move there, you can go and donate
There you go.
greateridaho.com.